You're just my ATM, Daniel. I only married you for security. Evelyn's voice dripped with cruelty as she leaned across the table, her manicured hand tapping the divorce papers she thought would make her rich. She smirked, convinced her crippled husband had no fight left in him. What she didn't know was that Daniel had already laid the ultimate legal trap, a move so brilliant it would leave her penniless and begging. What happened next will change how you think about loyalty, greed, and revenge. Viewers, have you ever been underestimated, only to prove everyone wrong? Has someone ever mistaken your kindness for weakness? How would you react if the person you trusted most revealed they never loved you? Share your story below. Tell me below. Let's talk in the comments. Her voice cut through the restaurant like a blade. Evelyn leaned across the table, eyes cold, and hissed at the man in the wheelchair who had given her everything. You're just my ATM. I only married you for security. Gasps echoed from nearby tables, but Daniel didn't flinch. He didn't beg. He didn't plead. Instead, he calmly pushed his wheelchair back, his voice like steel. Then it's not too late. Let's get a divorce. What happened next would shock her, destroy her illusions of power, and leave millions stunned at how the crippled husband she mocked turned out to be the strongest man in the room. Sit back, grab your popcorn and let's dive into this story of betrayal and revenge. The restaurant was quiet except for the clink of cutlery and the soft hum of a jazz band. Daniel Whitmore sat across from his wife, Evelyn, a man in his late 30s whose strong hands once built houses but now rested stiffly on the arms of his wheelchair. He had ordered steak, barely touched it. She, in a red silk dress, scrolled on her phone, face lit by the glow of a message thread she quickly hid when the waiter passed. Daniel, Evelyn began, her voice coated with impatience, I need money. The girls are planning a trip to Miami. Flights, hotels, shopping, you know, the usual. Daniel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. His voice was steady, but his eyes carried the weariness of someone who had carried too much too long. Evelyn, is that necessary right now? I'm still paying off the mortgage. Your car loan's due. We need to be careful. Her fork clattered onto the plate. She leaned forward, eyes flashing with irritation. Careful. You've become so boring. Always talking about bills, limits, what we can't do. Do you even realize why I married you? Daniel blinked. For a moment, he thought he misheard her. His jaw tightened. Excuse me. She didn't hesitate. She stabbed her steak with the knife, each word a slash. You're just my ATM, Daniel. That's it. I only married you for security. You think I fell for the guy in the wheelchair? Please. I needed someone stable. You're convenient. Reliable. Predictable. That's all. The words landed like bullets. People at nearby tables turned. A waiter froze, unsure whether to approach. Daniel's throat went dry, but he forced himself to swallow the lump. His pulse pounded, but not a single muscle on his face betrayed the storm inside. He slowly pushed back his chair, gripping the rims of his wheels. The silence between them stretched, so sharp it cut through the restaurant air. His voice came out low, calm, terrifying in its restraint. Then it's not too late, Evelyn. If I'm just your ATM, then let's get a divorce. Her painted lips parted in shock. For the first time that night, her mask cracked. She barked a laugh, trying to cover her nerves. You're joking. Look at you. You can't even walk out of this place without me. You think you can leave me? She tossed her hair, confident again. You'll come crawling back. You always do. Daniel said nothing more. He rolled back from the table, dropped his napkin onto his plate, and headed for the exit. Each rotation of his wheels was deliberate, steady. People stepped aside, whispering as he passed. His silence was heavier than any outburst could have been. Evelyn sat frozen, fork in hand, her smirk trembling at the edges. She told herself he was bluffing, but deep down, something in his eyes, something she hadn't seen in years, unnerved her. It wasn't weakness. It wasn't defeat. It was resolve. And for the first time, Evelyn wondered if she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. The apartment smelled of cheap wine and lavender candles. Evelyn kicked off her heels the moment she walked in, flopping onto her friend Jasmine's couch with a self-satisfied grin. She poured herself a drink, the red liquid spilling over the rim, and let out a laugh that echoed through the small room. "He actually said it, Jazz," she bragged, swirling the glass. "He told me, let's get a divorce." Can you imagine? Daniel of all people. The man can't even walk without wheels, and he thinks he's leaving me? Jasmine sat across from her, worry written across her face. She had known Evelyn since college, back before Daniel's accident, back when Evelyn was still talking about finding a man who could take care of her. "Eve," Jasmine said carefully, "you really shouldn't push him like that. Daniel may be quiet, but he's not stupid. And you've been," she hesitated, lowering her voice. "You've been reckless. With your spending. With other things." Evelyn waved her hand dismissively, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "Please. He's soft. He'll cool down and come crawling back. He needs me. Who else is going to cook his meals, drive him around, deal with his moods? He depends on me for everything." Her phone buzzed. She glanced down, and a smile crept across her face. She angled the screen away from Jasmine, but not before Jasmine caught a glimpse of the name, Aaron. Evelyn's so-called personal trainer. She typed quickly, her fingers dancing across the glass. "He finally snapped. Said divorce. But don't worry, he'll beg me back. He always does. I'll get everything soon. Then it's you and me, baby." Aaron replied within seconds, "Good. Keep him on the hook. The longer he thinks he's in control, the harder he'll fall." Evelyn giggled, tossing the phone aside and stretching out on the couch. "See? Even Aaron agrees. Daniel's nothing without me. And once this is over, I'll have his money and his house. I'll be free." Jasmine's lips tightened. She didn't like Aaron, never had. The man was slick, charming, but his eyes had the cold calculation of someone who used women as stepping stones. She wanted to warn Evelyn again, but Evelyn was drunk on her own arrogance, too intoxicated with the illusion of power to listen. "Just, be careful," Jasmine murmured. "You think you know Daniel, but sometimes the quiet ones, they surprise you." Evelyn snorted, taking another sip. "Daniel? Please. The only thing he surprises me with is how boring he can be. Tomorrow, he'll call, apologize, maybe even beg me to forgive him. And I'll make him sweat a little, just to remind him who's in control." But deep down, in the quiet corners of her heart she tried to ignore, Evelyn remembered the look in Daniel's eyes as he left the restaurant. Not broken. Not pleading. Something colder. Stronger. She pushed the thought away with another laugh, raising her glass like a queen holding court. To freedom, she toasted to herself, completely unaware that the game she thought she was winning had already begun to slip from her hands. The sound of Evelyn's laughter from Jasmine's apartment fades, and we slip into the past. 4 years earlier, the sterile smell of antiseptic hung heavy in a hospital room. Machines beeped steadily, measuring life by seconds. Daniel Whitmore lay in bed, his body bandaged, legs motionless under the sheets. A car accident on a rainy night had stolen his ability to walk, but not his spirit. He was groggy from medication, eyes heavy, but still searching for her. Evelyn rushed in, makeup smeared just enough to suggest she'd been crying. She clutched his hand tightly, squeezing it against her chest. "Oh, Daniel, thank God you're alive," she whispered. Her voice cracked, but her eyes darted toward the doctor, then to the clipboard, then to the gold band glinting on his finger. Daniel's heart softened. Through the haze of pain, he managed a weak smile. "Don't cry, Eve. I'm still here. I'll get through this. We'll get through this." She kissed his forehead, murmuring words of comfort, but when the doctor stepped outside, Evelyn slipped into the hallway, her phone already pressed to her ear. Her mother's voice answered. "How is he? Will he walk again?" Evelyn leaned against the wall, her tone dropping from tender wife to cold strategist. "No. The doctors say the damage is permanent. He'll be in a wheelchair for life." Her mother gasped, then hesitated. "Evelyn, are you ready for that kind of life?" Evelyn twirled a strand of hair, eyes glinting. "Ready? I don't need to be ready. This might be the best thing that's ever happened to me. He'll never leave me now. He'll always need me. And as long as I'm his wife, I'll always be taken care of. I'll never have to worry about money again." Her mother was silent, uncomfortable, but Evelyn pressed on. "Security, Mom. That's what marriage is about. Love fades, but security, that lasts. And now, I've got it guaranteed." She hung up, plastered the tears back onto her face, and slipped into the room. Daniel looked up, exhausted but hopeful. "Were you talking to your mom?" he asked softly. She smoothed his hair back, kissing his cheek. "Yes. She's praying for you. We all are. And I promise, I'll never leave your side. No matter what." Daniel's chest tightened with gratitude. In that moment, he believed her. He believed she was his anchor in the storm. But the truth, unbeknownst to him, was that Evelyn had already shifted from wife to warden, from partner to parasite. Her vows of loyalty were nothing but chains of convenience. Back in the present, Daniel would remember that night. The way she whispered promises she never meant. The way he mistook her hunger for money as devotion. And he would resolve, this time, there would be no mistaking her true colors. This time, she would face the weight of her own betrayal. The night air was cool when Daniel wheeled himself into his study. He closed the door, shutting out the world, and sat in silence for a long moment. Evelyn's words echoed in his head, "You're just my ATM." For years, he had given her everything, a home, comfort, protection. Even after the accident, he refused to let despair claim him. He rebuilt his life, piece by piece. And yet, the woman he trusted most saw him only as a paycheck. Daniel's jaw tightened. Enough was enough. He reached for his phone, tapping a contact labeled only as Mr. Hayes. The line clicked, and a deep, steady voice answered. "Daniel. I was wondering when I'd hear from you." "Hayes," Daniel said quietly. "Activate the file." On the other end, a chuckle. "The prenup?" "Yes. I want everything set in motion. Tonight." Hayes didn't ask questions. He was more than a lawyer, he was Daniel's old friend, the man who had urged him years ago to draft airtight protections before marrying Evelyn. At the time, Daniel thought it unnecessary. Love, he had believed, was stronger than contracts. But Hayes had insisted, and now, that foresight would save him. "You've got recordings too, don't you?" Hayes asked, his tone approving. Daniel's lips curved faintly. "Every call. Every word. My phone saves it all automatically. She thinks she's clever, but Evelyn has already confessed enough to hang herself in court." Hayes whistled low. "Smart man. I'll start the paperwork. When she realizes what's coming, it'll already be too late." Daniel ended the call and wheeled to his desk. He opened a locked drawer, retrieving a small black device. A recorder. He pressed play, and Evelyn's voice filled the room, cruel and mocking. "You're just my ATM. I only married you for security." He closed his eyes, letting the venom fuel him. Each insult was no longer a wound, it was a weapon. In the corner of the room hung a framed photograph. Daniel before the accident, standing tall in his work boots, holding up the keys to his first property. He had been a builder then, both of houses and of dreams. That man had not died in the crash. He had only changed form. Daniel touched the frame, his voice steady. You wanted security, Evelyn. Now you'll see what real security looks like, when it's gone. Meanwhile, across town, Evelyn lay on Jasmine's couch, phone buzzing with Aaron's messages. She smirked, convinced Daniel would crawl back. What she didn't know was that her husband had already taken the first step in dismantling the illusion she lived in. Quietly, carefully, without anger, just cold, precise intention. And once Daniel Whitmore moved in silence, nothing could stop the storm he was preparing to unleash. Evelyn woke late the next morning, sunlight slanting through Jasmine's thin curtains. Her head pounded, but her lips curved into a smile as she reached for her phone. Notifications lit up the screen. Most from one person, Aaron. He was everything Daniel wasn't, tall, athletic, charming, the kind of man who lived for attention. Evelyn had met him at the gym months ago, where he introduced himself as a personal trainer. But she didn't care about the weights he lifted, she cared about the way he made her feel wanted, alive, untethered from Daniel's steady, quiet presence. She opened his latest text. So. Did you tell him? Evelyn smirked, thumbs flying across the screen. Told him everything. Called him my ATM. You should have seen his face. Pathetic. He even said divorce, but he'll never follow through. Aaron replied almost instantly. Good. Keep the pressure. Once you've got access to his money, we can disappear. Miami. Dubai. Wherever we want. Her chest warmed at the fantasy. She imagined herself draped across a yacht deck, champagne in hand, while Aaron whispered promises of forever. She convinced herself he loved her. Not realizing he was already stringing along two other women who thought the same. Later that afternoon, Evelyn met Aaron at his apartment. The air smelled of cologne and leather. He pulled her into his arms before the door fully closed, his lips grazing her neck. You did good, babe, he murmured. He won't see it coming. Once you file, you'll get half. We'll have everything. Evelyn laughed, a sharp sound that echoed through the room. Half. Try everything. Daniel can't survive without me. I've got him wrapped around my finger. And once I bleed him dry, I'll finally be free. Aaron smirked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. That's my girl. But in his eyes, hidden from her, was calculation, not affection. To him, Evelyn wasn't a partner. She was a bridge to money, and when the bridge collapsed, he planned to walk away without looking back. Meanwhile, across town, Daniel sat in his study again, scrolling through his phone. Every message, every call Evelyn made to Aaron was captured. The app he installed years ago, paranoid after the accident, had never failed him. He listened now as Aaron's smooth voice leaked through the speaker. Once you've got his money, we can disappear. Daniel's face didn't flinch. He simply saved the file, adding it to the folder already bursting with Evelyn's betrayals. One day soon, the world would hear her truth in her own voice. And Evelyn would realize too late that the man she dismissed as powerless had been recording her downfall, piece by piece, all along. Daniel sat in the quiet of his study, the curtains drawn, his wheelchair angled toward the desk where his laptop glowed. The clock ticked softly in the background, but every second carried weight. On the screen was a neatly organized folder labeled Evelyn, Evidence. Inside, hundreds of files, call recordings, screenshots, GPS logs, receipts. Years of her words and actions preserved in digital amber. He clicked play on one recording. Evelyn's voice spilled out, dripping with venom. You're just my ATM, Daniel. I only married you for security. He paused, saved it into a subfolder marked Courtroom. Then another file, Aaron's smooth tone, coaxing Evelyn into betrayal. Daniel dragged it into the same folder. Piece by piece, he was constructing a case no judge could ignore. Beside the laptop lay a leather-bound notebook. Inside, Daniel had tracked Evelyn's spending, thousands blown on shopping sprees, spa retreats, and girls' trips that were nothing more than cover for nights with Aaron. Credit card statements lay spread across the desk, each page highlighting her recklessness in red ink. A knock came at the door. Daniel wheeled over, opening it to reveal Mr. Hayes, his lawyer and friend of 15 years. A man with sharp eyes, a sharper mind, and a quiet loyalty to Daniel that had never wavered. "Evening," Hayes said, stepping inside. "I looked over the prenup again. Ironclad. She walks with nothing." Daniel nodded, gesturing toward the desk. "I want more than just a prenup enforcement. I want the truth heard. I want her lies exposed." Hayes leaned over the laptop, scanning the folders. His brow lifted. "You've been thorough." "I had to be," Daniel said, voice low but steady. "The accident taught me people aren't always who they claim to be. Evelyn's been planning her escape for years, I could feel it. Now I don't need to feel it. I can prove it." Hayes picked up one of the credit card statements. "This alone will sink her. But with the recordings?" He shook his head, almost impressed. "By the time we're done, she won't just lose her claim to your money, she'll lose the court sympathy too." Daniel's eyes hardened. "Good. She traded love for security. Now she'll have neither." He slid a USB drive across the desk. "This contains everything. Backups are on the cloud. Multiple copies. Even if she tried to destroy it, the truth can't be erased." Hayes pocketed the drive with a nod. "Then we're ready. The next move is hers. Let her think she's in control. It'll make the fall harder." For a long moment, silence filled the room. Daniel stared at the framed photo on his shelf, him and Evelyn on their wedding day. She had looked radiant, smiling wide. He had looked at her as though she was his entire future. He turned the frame face down. The man Evelyn thought was weak had just become her worst nightmare, a crippled husband with evidence, a lawyer, and a plan. The courthouse buzzed with low murmurs as people filed into the oak-paneled chamber. Evelyn strutted in wearing a fitted black dress and diamond earrings, her chin high, her heels clicking against the polished floor. She looked more like a woman attending a gala than a divorce hearing. Behind her trailed Aaron, sunglasses perched arrogantly on his head, his presence radiating silent confidence. Daniel entered quietly, rolling into the room in his wheelchair. He wore a dark suit, his hair neatly combed, his expression calm. No theatrics. No anger. Just a steady, unshakable presence. Evelyn smirked at the sight of him, whispering to Jasmine, who had reluctantly come along for support. "Pathetic, isn't he? This will be over before it starts." Judge Morrison, a stern woman with silver hair and piercing eyes, called the session to order. Papers shuffled, lawyers straightened ties, and the tension thickened. "Mrs. Whitmore," the judge began, "you are seeking a divorce on grounds of neglect and emotional abandonment, requesting full spousal support and 50% of Mr. Whitmore's estate." "Yes, Your Honor," Evelyn said sweetly, her voice dripping with practiced charm. "I've stood by him through his accident, through his hardships. I deserve security for the sacrifices I've made." Daniel's lawyer, Hayes, rose smoothly. "Your Honor, before we proceed, we would like to introduce evidence that directly addresses Mrs. Whitmore's claims." Evelyn frowned, glancing at Aaron, who nodded for her to stay calm. Hayes pressed a button on a small speaker. The courtroom filled with Evelyn's unmistakable voice. "You're just my ATM, Daniel. I only married you for security." The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Gasps rippled through the benches. The judge's brows shot up. Evelyn's face drained of color, then flushed crimson. That's taken out of context. She stammered, but Hayes only pressed another button. Aaron's voice now, once you've got his money, we can disappear. Miami. Dubai. Wherever we want. Then Evelyn again, laughing, half. Try everything. Daniel can't survive without me. I've got him wrapped around my finger. The courtroom erupted. Murmurs swelled into shocked whispers. Evelyn clutched the table, her hands trembling. Aaron stiffened, realizing his own voice had betrayed him too. Judge Morrison rapped her gavel sharply. Order. Order. When silence fell, her gaze locked on Evelyn. Mrs. Whitmore, do you deny that is your voice? Evelyn swallowed hard, her bravado crumbling. I was angry. I didn't mean it. Hayes stepped forward, eyes cool. Your Honor, these are not isolated remarks. We have months of recordings, financial records, and witness statements proving Mrs. Whitmore's intent was not companionship, but exploitation. The judge's lips pressed into a thin line. She turned to Evelyn, her tone sharp. You claim sacrifice, yet your own words paint a very different picture. Evelyn slumped in her chair, her confidence stripped bare before the court. For the first time, she wasn't in control. And Daniel, silent in his wheelchair, simply watched, his calmness louder than her protests. The courtroom air felt heavier after the recordings. Evelyn's hands shook as she tried to compose herself, but her flawless mask was slipping. Daniel sat calm in his wheelchair, a quiet anchor amid the storm. Judge Morrison adjusted her glasses. We've heard Mrs. Whitmore's own statements. Now, let us address the division of assets. Evelyn's lawyer, a younger man she had hired quickly, rose to his feet. Your Honor, regardless of my client's words, she has legal rights to half of the marital property under state law. Mr. Whitmore's estate is valued in the millions. She is entitled. Hayes, Daniel's lawyer, stood without missing a beat. Objection. That is incorrect. There is a prenuptial agreement signed by Mrs. Whitmore before marriage. The words cracked like a whip. Evelyn's head snapped toward Daniel, her eyes wide. What? Hayes walked to the judge's bench, sliding over a crisp folder. Signed, dated, and notarized. In the event of divorce, Mrs. Whitmore forfeits all claims to property, businesses, and assets accumulated before or during the marriage. She agreed to this fully. Judge Morrison flipped through the pages, her sharp eyes scanning the signatures. Evelyn's signature stared back at her, bold and undeniable. This is a forgery. Evelyn blurted, voice shrill. I never signed that. Hayes calmly pulled out a second copy. We anticipated that, Your Honor. Here is the recording of her acknowledging the agreement at the time of signing. He pressed play on a device. Evelyn's younger voice echoed through the courtroom. I don't need to read all this. Daniel, I trust you. I just want us to start our life together. Where do I sign? Her own laughter followed, careless and dismissive. The judge's expression hardened. Mrs. Whitmore, is that your voice? Evelyn's mouth opened, but no sound came. The entire courtroom leaned in, watching her crumble. Even Aaron shifted uncomfortably in his seat, realizing the goldmine he thought he'd inherit was vanishing. Judge Morrison closed the folder with a decisive snap. The prenup is valid. Mr. Whitmore retains sole ownership of all assets. Mrs. Whitmore will receive no financial compensation. The words echoed like a death sentence. Evelyn stumbled back into her chair, her face pale. No, this isn't possible. He can't leave me with nothing. Daniel's calm voice cut through the silence. You said I was your ATM, Evelyn. But an ATM only gives money when you put something in first. You gave nothing. Now, you get nothing. The courtroom erupted with whispers. Evelyn buried her face in her hands, her diamond earrings catching the light like cruel reminders of the wealth slipping through her fingers. Aaron quietly slid away from her side, his loyalty dissolving as fast as her financial future. Evelyn felt the chill of abandonment closing in. For the first time, she wasn't the one holding the power. And Daniel, steady and composed, sat taller in his chair. The crippled husband she mocked had just broken her empire with one piece of paper. The courtroom had barely settled from the prenup shock when Judge Morrison cleared her throat. Now, we must address custody of the Whitmore children. At the mention of the children, Evelyn sat up straighter, clinging to her last lifeline. Her lawyer whispered furiously in her ear, but she waved him off, her confidence flickering back. She smoothed her dress, forcing a look of maternal devotion onto her face. Your Honor, she began, her voice soft, practiced, I've been the children's primary caregiver. I cook for them, take them to school, care for them day and night. Daniel, with all due respect, is limited. He can't run after them, can't play with them the way I can. The children need me. Daniel's jaw flexed, but he remained silent. His hands gripped the rims of his wheelchair, steady. Hayes stood instead, expression unreadable. With permission, Your Honor, I'd like to play one more recording. Evelyn froze. Her lips parted, but no sound came before Hayes pressed play. The courtroom filled with Evelyn's voice, sharp and careless. Those kids are such a burden. If it weren't for Daniel's money, I'd have left them ages ago. Once this divorce is done, he can keep them. I just want the cash. Gasps. Even Aaron shifted uncomfortably on the bench behind her. Evelyn's cheeks flushed crimson, her eyes darting wildly as though she could claw the words back out of the air. Hayes didn't stop there. He flipped through papers and handed copies to the judge. Financial records, Your Honor. Mrs. Whitmore has repeatedly withdrawn money meant for the children's education fund. Instead, she spent it on vacations, designer clothes, and luxury spa treatments. The judge's face hardened. Mrs. Whitmore, how do you explain this? Evelyn stammered. That's not true. He set me up. He fabricated. Enough, Judge Morrison cut in, her tone sharp as steel. Your words are recorded. The financial records are documented. The evidence is irrefutable. The silence that followed was crushing. Daniel finally spoke, his voice low but firm. Your Honor, I may not be able to run after my children. But I love them. I've been present at every parent-teacher meeting, every doctor's appointment, every bedtime story. Evelyn was too busy chasing freedom to notice. I don't want to punish her. I only want to protect my children. The judge nodded, her gaze falling heavy on Evelyn. Custody is awarded to Mr. Whitmore. Mrs. Whitmore will have supervised visitation only, contingent on proof of stable conduct. Evelyn's body jerked as if struck. No. You can't take them from me. They're mine. She reached for the table, her manicured nails scraping against the wood. Daniel, please. Say something. Don't do this. But Daniel's eyes held no pity, only quiet resolve. He looked past her, toward the future he would now build with his children, safe, secure, free from her poison. Evelyn collapsed back into her chair, tears smearing her makeup, her last shield stripped away. For the first time, she realized she hadn't just lost her husband or his money. She had lost her family. Evelyn stumbled out of the courthouse, her heels clattering against the steps. Cameras flashed, reporters smelled scandal. She pulled her sunglasses low, trying to hide the tears streaking her makeup. Aaron followed a few paces behind, his jaw tight, his charm slipping. In the car, she clutched his arm. Aaron, say something. You heard what happened. Daniel tricked me. He had everything planned. Aaron peeled her hand away, his tone cool. You mean Daniel outsmarted you? You told me you had him wrapped around your finger. Guess not. Her chest tightened. Don't talk like that. We can still make it work. You and me, remember? Miami. Dubai. All of it. We just need another plan. Aaron gave a humorless laugh. Another plan? Evelyn, you don't have custody of the kids. You don't have his money. You don't even have a house. What exactly do you bring to the table now? The words sliced deeper than Daniel's calm dismissal ever had. Evelyn's throat went dry. Aaron, please. Don't do this. I gave up everything for you. He smirked, starting the engine. Correction, you gave up everything for yourself. You wanted his money. I just played along. Evelyn's breath hitched. You're lying. You said you loved me. Aaron's smile was cruel. Love? Evelyn, you were a free ride. A thrill. But I don't do broke. He leaned closer, voice dropping. And now? You're broke. Her hands shook. Aaron. I'm pregnant. For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then Aaron leaned back, laughing darkly. Not my problem. She grabbed his sleeve, desperate. Don't leave me. I'll figure something out, I'll get money, I swear. He yanked free, his voice cold as steel. You don't get it, do you? I never planned forever with you. I've got other options. Women who don't come with court cases and prenups. Enjoy your freedom, Evelyn. The car screeched to a stop outside her friend Jasmine's apartment. Aaron leaned over, opened the door, and shoved her purse into her lap. End of the line. She stared at him in horror, her chest heaving. Aaron. But he was already looking at his phone, scrolling through messages, already gone from her life. The door slammed. The car sped away. Evelyn stood frozen on the sidewalk, the city blurring around her. She clutched her stomach, the weight of reality pressing down like a vice. No husband. No money. No children. And now, abandoned by the man she thought was her future. The world she built on greed and arrogance had collapsed, and she was standing in the ruins, alone. The courthouse emptied slowly, whispers trailing like smoke after a fire. Reporters chased sound bites, Evelyn hid her face in shame, and Aaron had already vanished. But Daniel remained behind, speaking quietly with Hayes. When they finally left, Daniel didn't return to an empty house. He returned to an empire. The elevator doors opened to the top floor of a glass tower downtown. The plaque by the entrance read, Whitmore Holdings Incorporated. Employees greeted him with respect. Good evening, Mr. Whitmore, as he rolled past rows of offices humming with life. Some carried files, others discussed real estate acquisitions, others ran analytics on massive screens. This wasn't a man barely surviving. This was a man thriving. Daniel wheeled into his office, a panoramic view of the city stretching wide before him. He paused by the window, watching the traffic below, then turned to the wall where framed documents hung, deeds, patents, investment contracts. Proof that he had quietly built wealth far beyond what Evelyn ever suspected. The accident had been his crucible. Where others saw weakness, Daniel had forged resilience. He couldn't walk anymore, but he could think, plan, and lead. The wheelchair that Evelyn mocked had forced him to sharpen his mind, and his businesses flourished because of it. Hayes entered, holding a stack of finalized papers. Everything is sealed. Assets secured, custody granted. She can't touch you now. Daniel nodded, his gaze steady. Good. I didn't want revenge for myself. I wanted protection for my children. Evelyn thought money made her powerful. But money without honor is a curse. Hayes smiled faintly. She underestimated you. Daniel's lips curved in the smallest of smiles. Everyone does. That's my greatest advantage. He turned his chair toward a photograph on the shelf. It was of him and his children, taken just months before the trial. Their small hands clung to his shoulders, their smiles wide, genuine. That was his true wealth. Not the skyscraper, not the accounts, not the empire. Them. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat in Jasmine's apartment, staring at the cracked ceiling, her mind replaying Daniel's calm face in court. The man she had dismissed as a crippled ATM was in truth a fortress of strength she never recognized. She had mocked his silence, not realizing it hid strategy. She had mocked his chair, not realizing it carried a king. And now, stripped of everything, she finally saw him for what he truly was. Not broken, but unbreakable. Weeks passed. Autumn leaves carpeted the streets, and the chill of change hung in the air. Evelyn walked aimlessly through the marketplace, her once polished heels scuffed, her designer dress traded for a faded cardigan. She carried groceries in a cheap tote bag, her belly beginning to show. The pregnancy was no longer a secret, yet Aaron was nowhere in sight. He had vanished like smoke, leaving her to face whispers and pitying stares alone. At the far end of the square, a sleek black car pulled up. The door opened, and Daniel emerged, helped only slightly by an assistant. His wheelchair gleamed, upgraded with subtle precision engineering. He wore a tailored suit, his presence commanding. Beside him bounded two children, laughing as they held his hands. Their joy was unshaken, their love unbroken. The crowd's eyes followed him with respect, admiration. Evelyn froze where she stood, clutching her bag tighter, her throat burning. He hadn't just survived. He had risen. Daniel's gaze swept the crowd, and for a moment, his eyes locked on hers. No hatred. No gloating. Just a calm finality. He nodded once, a gesture that said I see you, and I've moved on. Evelyn's lips trembled. She wanted to run to him, to beg, to plead for another chance. But her feet wouldn't move. The memory of her own words chained her, you're just my ATM. I only married you for security. Those words had destroyed her marriage, her family, her future. Daniel turned back to his children, his voice warm as he lifted them into the car. Ready to go home? Yeah, Daddy, they chirped in unison. The door closed, and the car pulled away, leaving Evelyn standing in the dust of her own ruin. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling freely now, streaking her tired face. For the first time, she realized she had gambled away love for greed, and the cost was everything. She whispered to herself, voice breaking, he wasn't my ATM. He was my home. But it was too late. Daniel drove on, the city lights reflecting in the glass. He felt no need for vengeance, her downfall was her own making. His heart was at peace, his children safe, his life secure. The woman who mocked his weakness had been defeated not by his anger, but by her greed. The lesson was clear, unshakable, never mistake kindness for weakness, and never build love on greed. Because in the end, security doesn't come from money, it comes from loyalty, respect, and the strength to endure.